We all carry pieces of the past, not just in our memories, but in the things we keep. A grandfather's watch, a mother's locket, a favorite chair worn smooth by generations. We imbue these objects with meaning, with sentiment. But what happens when the echoes of the past don't just linger around an object, but become trapped within it? When the history it holds isn't just a story, but a presence. Tonight, we ask, what stories do your heirlooms tell? And are you ready to listen? Sarah was knee-deep in the remnants of a life. Her grandmother, Elara, was gone, and the task of sorting through decades of accumulated belongings had fallen to Sarah. Box by box, memory by memory, the house became a museum of the past, each item whispering quiet, ordinary tales. Until box number 7. Labeled simply miscellaneous, it promised the usual assortment of forgotten odds and ends. But as Sarah tore away the tape and rustled through the packing paper, her fingers closed around something heavy, ornate, and instantly recognizable. The mirror. Elara's hand mirror. It had sat on her vanity dresser for as long as Sarah could remember, a silent, almost regal fixture in her grandmother's room. It was heavier than it looked, the frame a web of tarnished silver filigree, swirling patterns of leaves and tiny birds. And tucked away in the delicate metalwork, almost hidden, was a small, subtle face watching. Sarah remembered thinking it was beautiful, in a distinctly antique, slightly unsettling way. As she held it, she noticed the cold. Not just room temperature, but distinctly, unnaturally cold, even through the paper. She rationalized it away in storage, old metal, nothing more. She placed it down on a nearby table, its polished surface reflecting the dusty, disorganized room back at her. "Hello there, stranger," she murmured to her own reflection, tired and slightly dusty herself. The mirror offered no reply, only her own image staring back. Just a mirror, she thought. Just an object. Sarah continued her unpacking, the mundane task a necessary distraction from the quiet sadness of the empty house. She hummed softly, searching for photo albums tucked away in illogically labeled boxes. But as she moved about the room, a subtle unease began to creep in. She felt a faint draft, though the windows were closed. A shiver that wasn't from the temperature. She glanced towards the mirror, sitting silently on the table. It seemed to catch the light in a strange way, distorting the edges of the room, making the familiar space feel flatter, somehow unreal. She told herself it was just the stress, the long hours, the emotional toll of going through her grandmother's things. But then she saw it. A flicker in the glass. Not her own movement, but something else. A fleeting shadow, a shift in the reflection that didn't match the reality of the room. She blinked, looked again. Gone. Just her own tired face staring back. Then came the sound. A whisper. Faint, indistinct, like a breath of cold air right by her ear. She spun around, but no one was there. The sound wasn't wind, it was too specific, too close. It sounded like it was trying to say something, just beyond the edge of hearing. It vanished as quickly as it came, leaving Sarah unnerved, the quiet house suddenly feeling vast and empty, yet strangely occupied. That night, sleep offered no escape. Sarah was plunged into a vivid, unsettling dream. She was in her grandmother's bedroom, but it was decayed, wrong. The air was thick and cold, the wallpaper peeling away like old skin. And the mirror was the focal point. In the dream, it didn't reflect the room. Instead, It showed something else entirely, a blurry street scene from another era, figures in old-fashioned clothes. And faces, countless faces, pressed against the glass from the other side, eyes wide, mouths open, looking out, desperate to be seen. She woke with a gasp, the nightmare clinging to her like grave dust. Just a dream, she told herself, sitting up in the quiet darkness. Stress. Definitely just stress. And stopped dead. The mirror was facing the wall. She distinctly remembered placing it facing outwards, towards the window. She wouldn't have turned it around. Did she? Sleepwalking. It seemed impossible. With hesitant fingers, she reached out and turned the mirror back around. As it swung to face her, the high-pitched hum seemed to pulse, a subtle wave of pressure in the air, before settling back into that almost inaudible thrum. See, she murmured to herself. Nothing. Just a mirror. But as her gaze fell upon the glass, the reflection wasn't right. It was distorted, like looking through rippling water or smudged glass. For a horrifying instant, her own reflection seemed to warp, replaced by a fleeting, gaunt image, or a shadow lurking just behind her shoulder. She gasped, stumbling back from the table. The reflection snapped back to normal, showing only her own wide, terrified eyes staring back. That wasn't tired eyes. That wasn't stress. Something was happening. Something impossible. Fear was quickly replaced by a cold, focused determination. Sarah wasn't crazy. She wasn't just tired. Something was attached to that mirror. Something that had been in her grandmother's house for decades. She had to understand. She sat down and began to research. She searched online, falling down rabbit holes of vintage mirror history, antique superstitions, folklore about objects holding spirits. The results were a mix of academic articles and unsettling forums discussing scrying, mirror portals, and lingering energies. It was overwhelming, full of conjecture and theory, but little solid information about this mirror. She shifted tactics. Forget the object itself. What about its owner? Her grandmother, Elara, a woman who kept her private life fiercely guarded. Sarah dug through the boxes again, this time specifically looking for clues about Elara's past. Old photos, letters, anything that might shed light on the history of that room, that dresser, that mirror. She found old family albums. Flicking through the stiff pages, she saw her grandmother as a young woman, vibrant and smiling. And then she saw it. A photo taken in Elara's bedroom, perhaps sometime in the late 1940s. On the dresser, clear as day, sat the mirror. The same ornate frame, the same subtle face in the filigree. It looked exactly the same. Still, silent, watching. But as she traced the image, she felt that same unnatural coldness emanating from the paper. Tucked away beneath a stack of old linens, she found a small, leather-bound book. A diary. Her grandmother's handwriting, elegant but spidery with age, dated October 14th, 1947. Sarah read the entries, her voice hushed, a chill running down her spine. The dreams continue, Elara had written. The mirror, it shows me things. Not just me, but others. Faces. Reaching. He's there. Always there. Watching from the glass. He wants something. I don't know what to do. I tried covering it, turning it away, but it calls out. Whispers his name. whispers his name. A name Elara didn't record on that page. The entries continued, growing more desperate. October 20th, 1947. He's getting stronger. The reflection moves when I don't. Smiles when I'm crying. Sometimes he looks like Michael. But Michael is gone. This is something else. Something hungry. Michael. Elara's diary spoke of someone named Michael, gone, but seemingly connected to the malevolent presence in the mirror in 1947. Her grandmother hadn't just owned the mirror, she had experienced its darkness. And she had been terrified. Armed with the knowledge of her grandmother's fear, Sarah found the strange occurrences in the house accelerating. The subtle unease blossomed into overt manifestations. The air around the mirror grew heavy, thick with a palpable tension. She heard breathing close by, ragged and cold, yet saw nothing when she spun around. "Hello," she'd call out, her voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" The sound would vanish instantly. Then objects began to move on their own. A book would slide from a shelf. A door would creak open slowly as if pushed by an invisible hand. "Stop it," she yelled, frustration and fear warring in her voice. "Leave me alone." The whispers returned, louder now, swirling around her head like a cloud of angry insects. Indistinct, demanding, they pressed in, making it impossible to think. She clapped her hands over her ears, pleading, "Make it stop. I can't understand you. What do you want?" The high-pitched hum from the mirror intensified, a physical pressure in her skull. Her gaze snapped to the ornate glass. "It's you," she whispered, terror gripping her. "You're doing this." The mirror. She approached it, forcing her voice to be steady. "I know Grandma was scared of you. I read her diary. Who is Michael? What happened in 1947? What do you want?" Her reflection in the glass twisted, stretched, became something monstrous. A gaunt, pale face with wide, desperate eyes stared out at her from the silvered surface, accompanied by a horrifying, ragged inhale. She screamed, stumbling back, scrambling away from the object that was no longer merely a mirror, but an active, malevolent presence. The reflection settled back, the gaunt face flickering at the edge of her vision. The oppressive hum was now a constant, suffocating presence in the air, emanating from the mirror like a silent scream. Shaken but resolute, Sarah pulled herself up. The whispers persisted, a low, constant murmur, now punctuated by a name she recognized from the diary, Michael. Michael. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes he looks like Michael. But Michael is gone. Was Michael the trapped spirit? Or was he the victim of whatever the mirror contained? She approached the mirror again, slowly, cautiously. "Okay," she spoke to the glass, her voice quiet but firm. "If you want me to know about Michael, show me. Tell me." As she spoke, the reflection twisted, no longer showing her face, but swirling like smoke. Fragmented images appeared and dissolved: a woman weeping, a man's voice raised in anger, the sharp sound of breaking glass, a sickening thud like a fall. The whispers intensified, no longer just sound, but carrying the weight of emotion, despair, anger, regret. Sarah watched, horrified, as the story unfolded in distorted flashes. "What is this?" she whispered. "Is this what happened?" She pieced together the fragments. Michael, her grandmother, maybe someone else. A fight. breaking glass. A fall. My God, she breathed. Was there an accident? Did someone die here? Back then. For a terrifying moment, a clear image solidified. A young man, distressed, in what looked like her grandmother's room, his back to the mirror. A woman's hand reached out to him. Then the image shattered like glass. No. Sarah stumbled back. That was him. Michael. And that was Grandma. What happened? The whispers peaked, a chorus of desperate cries, then vanished. The mirror was a mirror again, showing only the room and Sarah, trembling. But the oppressive hum remained, a low vibration carrying the echo of the past. Sarah understood. Michael was trapped. Something terrible had happened in 1947, and he was bound to the mirror, his last moments replaying, wanting the truth to be known. Wanting her to know. To help him. She looked at the ornate glass, the fear now mixed with a strange, unsettling pity. A low, mournful sound began to emanate from the mirror itself, a pained keening layered over the hum. The reflection seemed to ripple, even when still. The whispers returned, no longer just ambient noise, but directed at Sarah, full of yearning and desperation. They began to form words, fragmented and distorted, but insistent. See, truth, show them. Michael didn't. And repeating, over and over, 47, 1947. Sarah grasped the meaning. 1947, the truth. He wanted her to show people what had happened. To clear his name. Had he been blamed for the accident? For that fall? The whispers became a chorus of urgency, confirming her terrible realization. He wanted the mirror taken out of the house, shown to someone who would understand, someone who could reveal the truth trapped within. Was this what Grandma Elara couldn't bring herself to do? Was she too afraid? A cold wave of fear washed over her. But how? How could she show anyone? What if they didn't believe her? And what if this entity was more than just Michael? What if it was something else entirely, something that would cling to her, follow her? A quick, horrifying flash of the gaunt, staring face in the glass, accompanied by a chilling, cold laugh, underscored her fear. Was this a trick? The keening returned, layered with the whispers, now a pleading chorus. Freedom, truth, free me. Free him. But at what cost? Her grandmother had kept the mirror hidden away for decades. There was a reason for her terror. Sarah looked from the mirror to the fragile pages of her grandmother's diary. The choice was terrifying, but she knew she had to make it. She had to try. She couldn't just leave this thing here, a prison for a potential spirit, or a source of lingering malevolence. Her grandmother couldn't face it, but maybe Sarah could. She grabbed the diary, its brittle pages a testament to Elara's fear. Then, steeling herself, she reached for the mirror. As her fingers closed around the tarnished silver, an intense cold shot up her arm, a physical manifestation of the presence within. The oppressive hum surged, emanating directly from the glass. God, it's freezing, she murmured, shivering despite herself. But she held on. She would take it somewhere. To someone who might understand. Someone who knew her grandmother, who knew the history of this town. She left the house, the hum pulsating with every step, the air around her colder than the evening chill. She went to see Dr. Elias Thorne, a local historian, an old friend of her grandmother's. She found him in his study, surrounded by books and papers. "Hello," she called out, her voice strained from fear and exertion. "Anyone home? Michael, are you here?" The last part was a desperate gamble, a direct address to the entity she carried. Dr. Thorne appeared, his expression one of surprise and concern. "Sarah, I wasn't expecting you. Is everything all right? You sound distressed." "Anne, is that?" He stopped, his eyes falling on the mirror clutched in her hands. "What is that you're carrying?" he asked. Sarah held out the mirror, her voice urgent, spilling out the jumbled fear and revelation. "Dr. Thorne," she said, I think I need your help. You're the historian, you know about this town's past, especially the 1940s. Anne, and you knew my grandma Elara." The oppressive hum pulsed violently. The mirror's reflection swirled, showing fragmented glimpses of the accident, the distressed man. "This mirror," Sarah insisted, gesturing to the glass. "It was hers. And I think it holds a secret, a truth, about something that happened here in 1947, about a man named Michael. And I think he's still in there. And he wants you to see." Dr. Thorne was silent for a long moment, his historian's mind processing her frantic words. "A secret, a truth," he said, his voice measured, skeptical. "Sarah, what are you talking about? This is just an old mirror." As he spoke, the reflection in the mirror cleared for a terrible instant, showing the gaunt, staring face looking directly at him. A sound of tearing metal and a horrifying scream erupted from the glass. Dr. Thorne gasped, stumbling back, his skepticism shattered by undeniable horror. "What in God's name?" he cried. The reflection warped back, but the hum and the frantic whispers continued. Sarah held the mirror tightly, her knuckles white. "See," she said, her voice firm despite her trembling. "It's not just a mirror. It remembers. It wants you to know the truth about Michael. In 1947, please, Dr. Thorne, look into the mirror and listen." Dr. Thorne stared at the mirror, his face pale, as the keening, the whispers, the fragmented sounds of a past tragedy surged from the glass, building to a deafening crescendo around him. He was seeing it. He was hearing it. The mirror was telling its story. Then, as suddenly as it began, the cacophony from the mirror cut off. Silence descended, thick and unnerving. The oppressive hum was gone. Sarah stood, breathing raggedly, the intense cold in her hands receding. "Is it gone?" she whispered. Dr. Thorne was silent for a long moment, his face etched with shock. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet, shaken. I saw. Sarah, I saw it. The accident. The fight. It wasn't Michael's fault. He was trying to help her. And he fell. From the window. My God. Elara, she must have been protecting his name. Or maybe she felt responsible. He paused, processing the terrible vision. The mirror, it showed the room. And Michael, trapped by his last moments, wanting the truth out. For her, for him. He slowly walked away from the table where Sarah had placed the mirror. "It's just a mirror now, Sarah," he said, his voice distant. An old, heavy mirror. Sarah looked at the mirror. It looked ordinary. The reflection was clear, showing the room, Dr. Thorne's retreating back, her own face. But something felt different. Changed. As she watched, she caught a fleeting movement at the very edge of the glass, a subtle shift, a feeling of being watched. It vanished the instant she tried to focus on it. Just a mirror, she murmured to herself, a shiver tracing its way up her spine. Yeah, just a mirror. The truth was out. Michael was perhaps finally at rest. But the object that had contained his tormented memory, the witness to a hidden tragedy, it felt as though it had absorbed the very atmosphere of those events, forever marked by the fear and sorrow it had held. Sarah believes she helped Michael find peace, revealing a long-buried truth trapped within an object of everyday life. But sometimes, freeing one spirit doesn't erase the mark left behind. Some objects don't just hold memories. They become infused with the very essence of the events they witnessed. The sorrow, the fear, the trauma. And even when the story is told, the echo remains. Do you look at the heirlooms in your life the same way now? The things passed down through generations. Do they feel a little heavier? A little colder? What secrets might they be keeping? Thank you for listening to this episode of the Hauntline. If this story sent a shiver down your spine, imagine what other objects around you might be hiding. Don't forget to subscribe to the Hauntline so you never miss a new tale. Share this episode with someone who loves a good scare, and leave us a review. It helps us reach more ears in the dark. Until next time, keep your lights on and be careful what you bring home.